Greetings and salutations.
And I am Chas.
Together, we're opposed against prohibition. We like reading, and we love cocktails. So prohibition.
Yes. And we're drinking Sarah's Choice. We're drinking the Hanky Panky cocktail.
Which came out in the 1920s by a female bartender, actually.
Yes.
It'll be in the comments.
Yes. We will link in the description box below. We're going to link a recipe. Let me start all over. In the description box below, we're going to link a recipe so you know how to make it, the ingredients. It's really simple. It's literally 3 ingredients. It's a gin-based drink, and we'll put a little bit a link to the history as well for the Hanky Panky.
It's basically a dry martini with a little bit of Fernet Branca.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that as with the channel grows and as we do more of these, we're going to do different drinks with every book. And it might be based on the book, it might not be, it might be just based on the decade. It might just be like, we ran out of time, here's a $14 bottle of wine we're gonna drink, so we'll figure it out. But so I think we'll get started just talking a little bit about first of all, how Sarah and I met. So we are pandemic friends. We met during COVID in March or April of 2020.
2020 after lockdown hit.
Yes, after lockdown. We met online, and I live in New York. Yes, Sarah is, in the DC area, and so we met online. We've been friends ever since. We have met in person. We've traveled. Yes, with some of our other friends we met online. You guys may meet them in the future if they want. But we've traveled, we've met each other, we've been to each other's houses. It's definitely Sarah's one of my closest friends. And so the reason I think we started this channel is Sarah and I have very different reading interests. We're both really big readers. We just read very different things. I tend to love nonfiction, adult contemporary literature, which I didn't even know was a thing until your sister Kate, who we're going to be mentioning a lot on this podcast. I think she's kind of our VIP or special. Yeah, hi Kate. Until Kate instructed Sarah and I figured out what that genre was. So I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of memoir biography. I actually read a lot of history books. I have an 1,800-page book on Napoleon that I'm planning to read this spring. So that's sort of where my tastes lie. And then Sarah, if you want to talk about the type of books that you like to read.
But mostly, I grew up reading sci-fi, fantasy, murder mysteries, YA still, because a lot of it is really good, especially when you get in the sci-fi fantasy genre. Romance, and I like happy kids.
And I think that's one reason we wanted to do the channel is because our tastes are so different that in real life, without it being friend homework or for this channel, we probably wouldn't cross paths. There wouldn't be a book that.
Poetry is the only thing we agree on.
Yeah, poetry. We both love poetry. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this sort of adventure. I guess we're going to go on because I know I'm going to read books that I would never normally read that you're recommending to me. So, and I really hope that you enjoy the future books as well that we're going to read. But so that was sort of the genesis of the channel to familiarize ourselves with other genres. And I know that a lot of people on BookTube read fantasy and read romance and read sci-fi, and I don't read any of those. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about the genres and keeping an open mind when I read them. So.
And you were very nice to me. So Chaz chose the first book.
I did. I chose the first book.
And she was very kind because one of the things that we have in common is that we both love classic cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So we are currently drinking, or I am currently drinking out of a Nick Nora glass, as in Nick Nora Charles, the Dead Man.
I think I am too.
I think it is as well. But Nick and Nora Charles, probably one of the original, like, whodunits. Also, sort of a screwball comedy, but not classic screwball comedy, but it is a classic comedy. Spanned 6 movies from 1934 to 1946. Highly unusual. I didn't realize I would go off on this, but apparently I am.
I'm glad you did, because I didn't know for a long time there were more movies. Way before Netflix and Criterion and all these things, it was just like it was on TCM, and it was just the first movie.
Well, no, there's some of them hold up better than the others. But the reason that I say that Chaz was really nice, my Nick and Nora Charles, and I hate the Pinky. She chose Lost My Girlish Laughter by Jane Smith. Jane Allen. I said Jane Smith for a reason. It's because Jane Allen is not a real person. Jane Allen is, in fact, a pseudonym. It is Sylvia Schulman and Jane Shore.
Yes.
And Sylvia Schulman was, in actual fact, the secretary to Selznick, who was the original producer behind Gone with the Wind, and the original very first, because there have been 4, A Star is Born. And the last one had Lady Gaga.
Yeah, it did. And the song Shallow that we won't play or sing because of copyright, but it's a great song. So you can pause this video, go listen to Shallow Cry, come back, and finish watching.
30 seconds of it starting now. Anything more than that, we get copyright issues, but we can play 30 seconds of it. Also, you don't want us to sing it. I will happily do it, but you will all be unhappy I did.
No one wants us to, Reading is more my area of expertise. So I'm glad. So the sort of idea we have for the channel, I'll choose a book, Sarah will choose a book. We'll sort of alternate. Right now our plan is to update monthly. So for the month of February, this will be our posting, and our book will be Lost My Girlish Laughter. Then Sarah will choose
what the next book is.
Yes. And at the end we're going to reveal what Sarah chose for me to read. So can't wait for that. But so that's sort of the theme. No?
Don't sound too excited.
Well, I'm excited. I'm sure it's going to be something I've never heard of, and yeah, it'll be fun. So I'm really glad you liked it, Sarah. I know it's called the classic Hollywood novel of the 1930s, but do you want to kind of talk about what it's about, why it's called that? I don't know if you want to jump in.
Sure. So this is a book that is looking at late 1930s Hollywood through the lens of a secretary in one of the big studios. And again, the original author is Sylvia Schulman, and she, again, was secretary. And it's just a wonderful, witty, quick read. It should have been a movie. This should have been produced in the 30s.
Yeah, it's written like it's a screenplay.
It basically is. And I adore the style in which it's written. It's very unusual, especially for the time. I did not expect it when you gave it to me. But it is telegrams, letters, and where is it? Ah, yes, inter-office communications.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lovely way to introduce everyone to your character from the set, is to let them sort of introduce themselves and their character and the different facets of their character that they give to other people.
Yeah.
Because it is all first source documents. You get that sense of, this is how I'm portraying myself to my best friend. This is how I'm portraying myself to my aunt. This is how I'm portraying myself to prospective job interviews, because one of the things that I didn't know is that when you went for a job in the 30s, you got a letter of introduction.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I mean,
I read one.
I think that the story's told from the point of view of Madge Lawerence, our protagonist, and she's clearly a write-in or a substitute for the actual author, who's also a secretary, like Sarah mentioned. And so I thought it was such a creative way to write a book, that you have diary entries, letters, inter-office communication. It really does have the tone and the vibe of the snappy, like, screwball comedy dialogue, the films of like Carol Lombard and Clark Gable and all these things. It really does have that, even when no one's speaking, it has that energy. It just kind of keeps you flying through the pages. I feel like you can read the book in a day and a half if you really, it's only 192 pages, something like that. So, and I think one thing I want to backtrack is that the intro, written by J.E. Smith, is amazing. for the book.
It gives a lot of context.
Yeah, so if you're not a fan of classic Hollywood or you don't know a lot about it, it puts the book in context of the time, the decades it was written, the actual film studio that it's based on, Paramount, and it really sort of places you. I thought it was Paramount and MGM was the rival, but I could be wrong.
Because Selznick worked for MGM.
Maybe it was MGM.
I think it was MGM because that was one of the reasons why it didn't get produced, is because not only did Selznick work for MGM,
yeah,
father-in-law was mayor.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, definitely. So it's so there's a Selznick character named Sidney Brand, which is obviously a take on the brand name. And there's Madge. And one of the things I really like about the book is that it gives a breakdown of the characters as if it's a stage play or a screenplay at the beginning. Like this person is Page Boy. This person is an actress based on Marlene Dietrich, which she very clearly was. So the book is a tell-all, but it has characters that are based on famous people, but also maybe off famous people like Clark Gable.
And also a lot of authors at the time, they have fake columns from actual columnists who wrote for the variety pages and
That's a good point.
And
I think Noelle Parsons is Carson's in this, Stella Carson's or something like that.
Oh, it was very thinly veiled, all of it. And
it's true.
And so when you say that it's the classic Hollywood novel that no one knows, is in the 30s everyone would have read this. I'm sorry, you wouldn't have been able to go out without having heard about it. I don't know what to compare it to, but like 12-year-olds when Harry Potter came out, like everyone was reading it because everyone kept up with the gossip pages on Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
It literally had people terrified that they were in it.
Yeah, and you had the photo play. You know, it was photos of stars' homes inside and all this. So this book is really like, it feels like kind of a diary, but it's a combination of like a tell-all wrapped in like a novel that's actually a screenplay. And I think one of the things I like about it is that even though it's about the film studio in Hollywood in the 1930s, not a great time for, you know, color, minorities, or women, but it doesn't feel like a cynical book. It doesn't feel like a negative takedown, you know, sort of unhappy character. There's in the sense that like it makes fun of the studio system without being cynical about it.
No, and it's very hopeful. And it again, there's very blatant sexism in it.
Yeah.
All over the book. But again, it's from the point of view of a woman
who's
experiencing that sexism. And she's also experiencing being looked down on in the film industry because she's not that bright young thing. I think they called them the bleach blondes who are out for themselves. And she's very much not going to herself get out there by going the way of the casting couch.
Right. And you mentioned before, she's not trying to be an actress.
No, she's not. And that's one of the things that helps her get her job.
Right.
Actually. And I think it's fascinating the way that she looks at other women and she lambasts some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them love the character, the Marlene Dietrich character, the Coconut Grove woman.
Mm-hmm.
And some other women, but others she's like, love her. She does these one things. Love her. Hate her for that. But it's obviously not the gender.
Yeah.
It is the character and who she is taking those archetypes and saying, this person was good. This person can go die in a fire.
I mean, I know that the intent was not this, or I assume the intent was not this. I read a lot of feminism in the novel, just in that, like, when I read about even the Marlene Dietrich character, or like other women at the studio who wanted her job, or actresses who were just desperate to get to Sidney Brand, she treats them as individual characters and people. I don't ever get the sense that she's making fun of their gender, or like, you silly woman. She can be self-deprecating in terms of like, oh, I'm such a girl right now, but I never get the sense that she dislikes herself or distrusts herself or distrusts other women. She actually understands why all the women in the story act the way they do.
And that's an interesting point, because with the Marlene Dietrich character, who is Saren Tarn.
Yeah.
I don't know quite how to pronounce her name. I suppose it's Viennese, as in from Vienna.
Yeah.
But the way she describes the fact that Taryn sleeps around a lot is completely different than the way she describes this one actress you meet in it, who has a boyfriend. The boyfriend knows that she's an actress in Hollywood and is like, you need to do what you need to do to get up. I know you're coming home to me at night.
Yeah.
You need to.
Myrtle. Myrtle is the
Oh yeah, Myrtle. Myrtle knows whether it's that. But she's also nice to other people. Like, she's a good human.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the partner is fully aware of what's going on, so consent is involved. As opposed to Taryn, who basically raped all of her male co-stars and cast members and like stuff. Is the feeling that I got.
There are no boundaries. With Myrtle and Ted, they really, I mean, the novel is progressive in the sense that it does have this, like, they never say it, but this quote-unquote open relationship where Myrtle knows that Ted knows that if she flirts with Sidney Brand, or if she has to, like, do what she has to do to become, if she has to become the name in lights a certain way. But the thing I like about Myrtle, even though she's a minor character, is that she's very self-aware. At the end of the novel, she's not cast aside. She's not a nobody. She's got her own career. She actually cracks jokes with Madge and Jim Palmer, who we'll talk about next. Because he's a major character in Madge's story and in the book. But I like that Myrtle didn't become just like a random side character and didn't matter. She really had an important role, and I just appreciate what the author did with her character. But I want to go into Jim Palmer. So tell me what you thought about him. Now that I've read the book 3 times, I think, I want to hear your first impressions or impressions when you read the book in terms of Jim's character.
So Jim grows up a lot over the course of the book. This is really a heroine's journey. So you see Madge's growth, but you also see growth of some of the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Jim at first is he's a playboy. He has a date every night, and the implications there that he goes home with him every night. And gets as far as he can. And Madge wants absolutely nothing to do with that kind of person.
Right.
And I don't blame her. I'm the same way. Power to you if that's what you can do. Like, yay, Myrtle. But that's not me. And so Jim, like, I would be suspicious too. And so she keeps him at a distance, and they sort of flirt and get closer, and then he's an ass, and she's mad at him. And then she gets close to somebody else, and he reacts childishly.
Yeah.
Like, he starts treating her badly afterwards, and I didn't like him at that point, but you see his gradual growth and realizing that, yeah, it was my own past actions and the way that I've acted currently that have caused this. And he becomes supportive of it. Like, he grows as a person.
Right.
And she's not letting him change. She's just like, no, I don't want you, and I don't want that. And he realizes, oh, I'm the asshole. Gross.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I will say the first time I read it, I read the book, I didn't like Jim, especially the Santa Claus scene where he dresses as Santa and climbs in her bed, and she just finds him when she comes home.
No, she woke up and it was there.
Yeah.
It was worse.
I feel like it was written with the intent of sounding cute, but also Madge was very upset with this, obviously, her coworker in her bed.
Yep.
And
it doesn't matter if you've been flirting or not, that's not okay.
Right, so through a 2023 lens, like, it feels a bit different, but I really tried to read the novel in the context of when it was written. Yeah, so on the second and third rereads, I have come to really love Jim and see his willingness to change and grow and understand what Madge needs and wants, because she definitely never changes for him. She never concedes. She never decides she's going to do something different for him. I think the real villain of the story is Bruce Anders.
Yes. Well, and Sidney Brand.
Brand, yeah.
Brand is the overarching villain, and I want to say that Anders is like one of the minor bosses.
Yeah, Brand is the Palpatine to Anders Vader.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I used to think you were the person, so I can't wait. All the people are going to come for me in the comments, like all the fanboys, like, actually in 1984 or whatever. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I completely agree. It's Anders. I would say so. Bruce Anders is what Sidney Brand studio they're creating the new male heartthrob. They talk about how women used to lust after Valentino, and then they wanted like an action figure. Now they're obsessed with Clark Gable. And so he's trying to make Sidney's trying to make Bruce Anders into the next Gable or the next man that women lust over, because the book actually says like most people who buy tickets are women, which is still true today. So I was really happy to see that the book called out that women keep the film industry afloat in terms of audience. But yeah, I think Bruce Anders, when I first read the book, yeah, exactly. I thought Bruce Anders was gay, which he's not. He's just, crazy asshole. What was your sort of what was your impression of Bruce Anders as you read?
I could see why you thought he was gay. I didn't have that thought, but I was like, interesting. He seemed like a gentleman at first, and I thought that it was even more interesting because he's coming from the New York theater scene.
Yeah.
And like, New York theater scene, especially in the 30s, it was kind of cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
Still cutthroat. Like, he can be nice and fun, but you're not going to be like this perfect, innocent gentleman.
Right.
He definitely got swallowed up very willingly, by the film industry, and uses Madge, and leaves her high and dry.
Yeah.
And then screws her over royally later by being nice.
I mean, the thing is, like, I don't know whether I read him now on my second or third read as like fake the whole time, or if he was genuine at first and then Hollywood got to him. But
I read it as genuine at first, and then Hollywood got to him.
Yeah.
And I find the whole ending part and his role in it fascinating.
Yeah.
Because he had to have, maybe he's just still that naive about people.
Right.
Because it is his naivete about humans and human nature that caused a lot of his own problems.
Right.
And
spoiler alert, Madge tells him that they're going to try to get him to break the rules of his contract by behaving poorly or by doing something. Again, there were morality clauses. There were all these things written into contracts at the time in the 1930s that prohibited stars from acting a certain way or conducting themselves in a certain way in public. So the Sidney Brand was trying to get, he basically was gifted Clark Gable to do his film, The Gentleman from the South, which I think we all know what that's based on. And then, so in order to have Gable, he had to get rid of Anders, who had already showed up in LA. And Madge found out that Sidney was plotting this whole scheme to get Anders to break out of his contract. He put him in a crappy hotel. He gave him a bunch of screen tests and made him look terrible, playing into the actor's vanity, where if you see yourself looking like, whodunit or whatever, like Methuselah, you'll be like, okay, forget it. And Madge tells Bruce, and then it comes back in the end of the story, spoiler alert, that he talks to Sidney and says, oh yeah, Madge is the reason I have a career. And like you said, Sarah, I'm like, does he just think is he still naive enough to think that's okay? Was he trying to like screw her over? Like, I'm still trying to figure that out.
I don't think we'll ever know because he's a fictional character and we can't ask him, but I wish I could.
Me too. I'm sure there's fanfic, or there will be.
Maybe there was them. It's been lost in Grandma's attics.
But yeah, I had no. Bruce Anders was the one character I didn't have any sympathy or empathy for. Everyone else, especially the playwright Tussler, he was adapting the play to, I think it was Asylum of Sinners or something like that, was the original title. So yes, and so he was brought on from New York to help bring the screenplay to life from the stage play. And I just want to say that I have a soft spot for him because if I identify with anyone in the story, it's Tussler. He's basically like, I just want to write my plays. I miss New York. Can I go home? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he has I think some of the best Western Union exchanges are between Tussler and Sidney, where he's on the train and he's just like, forget it, like you and your whole empire can burn, and then it says stop like every 5 words.
Exclamation was one of my favorite parts.
Yes. So that was great. So I really related to Tussler. I thought that, he was like kind of a sympathetic character, and I think he kept being called a communist at some point.
They did. They were like, I didn't realize you were a common. And he's like, I'm not. And then, like, he was always protesting the fact that he was not a communist, which I didn't realize was such a huge thing in the 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that, like, what you said, like, stop, exclamation point, the little drops of, like, what it was like to actually live in the 30s was amazing.
Exactly. We're so used to being able to text like an ex or a friend we don't like or something and just be like, this is it. But I imagine waiting a week or 3 or 4 days or whatever for Western Union. It's just like, it's crazy.
Oh, and then getting stuff on the wire and then not having, like, letters would take longer than they do now.
Yeah. I know that because speaking of the 30s and all that, I know you wanted to talk about the Hays Code because they're, like I mentioned, the morality clauses and all that. So tell us a little bit about the Hays Code and how that ties into the book.
1934, and that actually has an impact in the book because the original screenplay that Tessa wrote was about a mulatto woman, and I'm using the correct terminology from the time. Sorry to anyone that offends, but that's what they say in the book. So mixed race woman who was in a romantic relationship with a white man, and that was against the Hays Code, miscegenation. I learned this while reading this. I knew a lot of the more progressive ideals that were happening in this film were not okay in the 1930s, especially 1934 when in effect. They would actually do different cuts of the movies for Chicago versus, say, Alabama. Literally have the same movie and have different cuts because it would be legal in one state and not legal in another. So the Hays Code tried to make it all cohesive, but it also was using certain people's moralities on it. So that was one of the reasons why Tessa was so pissed, is they took his screenplay and took the title and like the characters' names, and that was it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they changed it to a Spanish character. I think even in the book they're trying to debate where to set it. New England, is that going to be less receptive versus the South at that time? It's just
background, yes.
Yeah, so I'm fascinated by that. I'm originally from the South, but like I said, I live in New York now. But I'm fascinated by the debate between if a person is entered into New England society and all the like manners of that, or is the South more interesting in terms of like rejection, like using discrimination and hatred as like a plot point, basically. I mean, that's kind of what they were doing. I just thought that was fascinating. I personally, I love this era in film. I love pre-code. I love post-code. I don't really have an allegiance to one or the other, but you're right. The Hays Code had a huge influence on the novel, and it talks about it. It makes fun of the studio system, but it also makes fun of the Hays Code. It kind of makes fun of it's an equal opportunity, throwing shade.
Oh, it is. She goes and pops everyone's balloons.
Yeah, she really does.
Including the Hollywood writers at the time. I think one of the other things that I really loved about it was it's through diary entries that you get the really lovely prose and descriptions of things. So in the novel, Madge and Jim go to San Francisco, and the way she describes San Francisco versus the way she's been describing Hollywood is very fascinating to me. It's this very evocative picture of people who just don't care about Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's bubble.
It's great. So they're just account and like, moms and waitresses, like they're not in it for the money. It's such an intimate the scene of them in the hotel bar, Jim and Madge, is so poignant. I totally agree, Sarah.
So I loved that.
They left the reality of being in a bubble in Hollywood and LA, even if they're not on the lot. Being in LA at that time and in the circles they were in, it was like, I totally loved that. I love seeing them outside the bubble, and being just in San Francisco was like being a world away.
It was. And it was just fascinating the way that you get this glimpse into life at the time.
Yeah.
And this colorful description of what the Coconut Club would have been like.
Yeah.
Places that I had known about. And they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So we can't go back to them, and if they did exist, they're not what they were, and I'm not sure that we ever wanted that to be, because I don't know about you, but my hair will smell like cigarette smoke, and I know that they were just
Yeah.
wall cigarettes.
But I do want to see all their costumes, like the green suit that Madge lends out to her housemates at the beginning, and like the fact that all of them know how to sew or like let in waste or let out waste.
That is something that I intellectually knew happened in that day and age, but it's one thing talks about so casually as like she got there, she was living in a boarding house for young, single, unmarried girls. Unmarried is the key.
Yeah, with a coach.
And they would in their clothes to each other for different things.
Yeah.
And one of the girls, like, she was like talking about putting her clothes into the rotation.
Yeah.
They could all lend from this one giant closet, and the one girl was larger than the others. Doesn't mention how long, which she would let out the seams and drop the hem. And also, I know how to do that. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with someone else's dress, and I would murder anyone who did it to mine. So
yeah. But I like that feeling of camaraderie. I think that also goes back to the whole idea of it, like the feminism and the like respect for other women. Like when she describes other women that are in the house, she's never degrading them. She's just like, this person's a writer, she doesn't talk to anyone. These people want to act, so they. It's almost like she's so self-aware and she's such an empath that she can just like detect what someone's deal is, being a woman in Hollywood at that time. And they're solving into categories, but it doesn't feel like the silo doesn't feel cold or dismissive.
And it's not, they're not firmly placed there. They're capable of moving, if that makes sense.
Like Jim, he's capable of growing.
He is. And some people are given the chance to grow and don't.
Yeah.
Like Marn and Brand.
Yeah, Brandon and Bruce are just, they are like, I would be curious to hear anyone else's take on them if they've read the book, but Sidney Brand and Bruce Anders are definitely the villains in the story to me, personally. But I think one thing I want to say, like I know we're kind of wrapping up, but I want to say for me, I know it's a book about Hollywood and LA, and I love LA. I've been there many times, and I love the West Coast, but I love that the book is kind of a very quiet love letter to New York. I live in New York now, and the author was from New York or moved to LA from New York, and the protagonist.
State College.
Yes, exactly.
Existed in 1937.
Right.
Which was not.
Right. So there's little moments in the book where she's at Catalina Island and she thinks she gets in the water and she's in the sand. She thinks of Coney Island, and when Madge first moves to LA, there's this whole there's about the bright sunlight on the side of white buildings and the flowers.
Very painting pictures with words.
Descriptive, like just so descriptive without being technical and like cold. She can place you, the author places you in Hollywood at that time. She even talks about Madge being from New York, being pale, and now she's in LA and the sun's relentless. And the book kind of, as it goes along, she adjusts more and more to the climate and the people and all that. And so as a New Yorker, I just felt like there was a quiet love note to New York in there. Again, I could be totally willing to just see that no matter what. I say to LA, it's not a Biggie Tupac situation, but I loved the visceral moments of New York. The moments of New York that she described were so visceral. I can tell that she lived here and talked about it that way. And so I was very happy to see that. And I feel like the book technically ends happily ever after for Madge. What would you say?
It does. It's not the ending that I think she would have foreseen for herself.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that there is romance in this book, but it's not a romance, because for a romance to be as such, the plot can't stand on its own without it.
Okay.
That is what the romance genre is.
I never knew that. I just,
that is the definition of what the romance novel is.
Yeah.
That if you don't have romance between these two characters, there would be no plot.
Okay.
There would be a plot without the romance between these two characters. And what I think I love about all of it, again, is the way it's written is through notes
Mm-hmm.
person documents, when you see the evolution of that love story and people getting closer together or people getting further apart through that, and based on forms of dress, yours Madge,
Mm-hmm.
or hey, and now he's signing it as Jen.
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to everything else. And it's these subtle little indicators of private conversations that you are not party to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as someone who loves history, who knows historians, who has done first person document research,
Mm-hmm.
that this is thing. Like, if this were true, like, you could theoretically, from actual people, create a novel like this in first person sources if they still existed.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me to do it. And it does end happy, hopeful.
Yeah.
The main character and her love interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it never feels disingenuous when you imagine Jim, again, spoiler alert, end up together, and it's left almost open ended, but also happily ever after, which I really liked. And it's not cynical. It's not. Here's the other thing. It's not, in my opinion, it's not disingenuous in both its snark and its happiness. It allows people to feel all of the things, because all of those things can be true. You can love being at Coconut Grove, but also be like, I can't believe my boss is asking me to do this. All these people are fake. Like, both of these things can be true. You can enjoy many different facets of a life that maybe isn't always great. And so I think this should be a screenplay. Like, it's written like a screenplay. I want to fan cast this. I want people to make this into a movie. I don't have any money to give you, but I don't know. I think that it would make an amazing.
I will give you my movie ticket money.
Exactly.
I will talk about it on my just established BookTube channel with one of my best friends.
Same. I feel like it's kind of flies under the radar. The libraries that I'm a member of do not even have a regular copy, let alone an audio copy of it. So I'm going to donate this to the New York Public Library where I live, and
Chaz gave me this copy, so I'm keeping it.
yeah, I'm going to take my tabs out before I inflict it on other people, but I want more people to read this book. I found out about it years ago through through classic film forums and boards. And so I am happy to pass it on. I've never recommended it to anyone and they haven't liked it, even if they don't like classic film, or even if they're like, it's 192 pages. It's a low investment. Right. It's a fast read. It's quick. It's funny. I think it's worth checking out. I really do. I would recommend you read it. I know I'm biased. I chose the book for this month, but I love the book. And I've given it to people even more cynical than me, believe it or not, who love it. So I'm really happy. Are there any final thoughts that you have, Sarah, other than you love the book, which makes me so happy?
I understand why it wasn't produced in the 1930s, but I'm still mad. I'm gonna die mad that it was never turned into a film that I can go watch. It would have been an Oscar winner. It would have definitely been part of like the classic film, like top 100 films.
Yeah.
If it's done right.
Okay.
If they had done what Brand would have done to it.
I agree. It could have been a great, and it still could be a great screwball comedy. We can get into rom-coms in another episode, but it has so much potential. It is literally just waiting there. Like, whoever has money, like Barry Jenkins, Reese Witherspoon, whoever, like, come develop this book. It's just waiting to be.
It's classic Hollywood is very in right now. Come on, guys, do it.
Very distinct character. And I really also want to just like shout out, female writers, novelists, and especially in the position that the author was in, being a secretary and writing this literally in her free time and on honeymoon and all these different things. Like, she and her husband were both writers, so allegedly they spent their honeymoon writing, which I think this is great. If this is what came out of your honeymoon, like, best honeymoon ever. So, that's great. So the format, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be we switch off selecting books for the other to read. I chose I Lost My Girlish Laughter. This month, for Sarah and I to read and reread. And so for March, because we're going to do the monthly updates, like I said, Sarah gets to choose a book. And again, there's no restrictions. It could be anything. Alana Andrews, yep.
The tribe already knows this, but you guys might not. Alana Andrews is one of my favorite authors, and they're actually a husband and wife team. Alona and Andrew Gordon. And Magic Bites is the first of the Kate Daniels novels. Chaz is taking a long sip of her drink because she knows what's coming. This is fantasy sci-fi. It is not fantasy sci-fi romance. It does stand alone. Now that you know that.
Yeah.
And it takes place in a place that you're very familiar with, but it's very different. Atlanta.
Okay.
But it's after sort of a magical apocalypse.
Okay.
Where there are ways technology works and ways that technology doesn't. And our protagonist, she's kind of an anti-hero. A little bit. She is a hero, but she's
an anti-hero, so she's like, hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
She's part of the problem, yes.
Yeah.
We love our in this household, by the way. No, but she's a reluctant hero.
Yeah.
Just trying to get by in the world, but she's a good person. And that doesn't always work out in her favor.
Okay, so help me understand. Is it romance? Is it sci-fi? Is it YA? Is it a combination? Is it fantasy? Like, I know all the Alana Andrews fans in the comments are going to be yelling at me, but I'm just trying to understand.
So, I'm also trying to not give you spoilers before we start talking about it.
No spoilers.
So, Kate Daniels is a mercenary when you meet her.
Okay.
She's living in where you don't know if the magic is up. So, in this world, magic ebbs and flows.
Okay.
So, at this point, 30 years in the past, magic came into the world and destroyed technology. Planes fell out of the sky, thousands died. It was like a time of great unrest. Like, thousands died. And then magic went away all of a sudden. People were like, cool, that was over with. Technology started working again. Like, cars would work, guns would fire. And then a couple days later, like, for a couple days, magic was back. And then they're having to learn how to live in this world where technology works and magic doesn't. But it's also one of those things where it's interesting, and this is where the world building, and one of the reasons why I love Alana Andrews comes into play, is that telephones will work when magic works, but randomly. Do you know how your telephone works? No, you don't know how your telephone works. It just works, doesn't it?
Yeah, I trust it to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Believe that it'll work.
Right.
Especially if you had a landline. Like, it just works.
Right.
Somehow.
So I'm really excited. I'm so excited to, I just want to say this, like, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to look for it in the library. I think you mentioned the audiobook was also, like, maybe.
The audiobook is amazing. Actually, like, it's read by Renee Rodman.
Okay.
She's a good voice actress. She does all 10 books if you want to keep going.
Okay.
We won't do that to you guys.
10 books. Okay.
And there's a novella that just came out last night.
Okay. Well, I am happy to read the first book in the series, and I'm glad that I get to be exposed to something that you think is really great. I don't know, does your sister Kate read her books as well, or is it? Okay. Okay, again, this lots of Kate, another MVP, a shout out. This must be called like Kate's fans or whatever. Like,
it should be. Like, I am my sorry, Kate's husband. Sorry, my parents too.
No, it's
anyway. I get to be a number one fan.
Yeah. So, did you see the book?
She introduced me to. I want to say she introduced me to Alana Andrews.
Okay.
It was definitely Kate Daniels first because she's got multiple series, and I like all of them.
Okay.
But and I say she, they have adult series. But I had a short list of 4 books that I was deciding between, and Kate and I were discussing it, and we decided that this, first of all, it's not romance. Like, the other one that I had for you is in the romance category, and I know because I went and bought them for another friend of ours. Not that she knows that she's getting them because I haven't been able to give her Christmas presents yet.
Right. I agree.
So I was able to actually go buy them recently and know where they are in the bookstore.
Okay.
tell a lot more about them, but it also doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I
So
said I trust Kate. I trust you, and like I said, I'm going to keep an open mind.
the world building in this one, I think, is some of the best in fantasy.
Okay.
And that's what Ilona Andrews is really good at.
Okay.
Again, with
Yeah.
the telephone question.
Yeah, because I'm a Slytherin, so is the Hufflepuff, and so if that gives you an idea of why we're friends and what our mannerisms and like behaviors are like, but I'm really like I don't know if I've ever read a true fantasy or sci-fi book ever, other than like Lord of the Rings. So I don't know if I've ever. Yeah, I've never really. We can get into it. I love the Hunger Games, but like that's a whole other conversation. But like I am really excited and looking forward to it.
You read the Hunger Games?
I did. I read them in about a week and a half. All three. Oh, I loved it. I used to read Hunger Games fanfic. But it was in the U.S.
You do have YA fantasy, right?
But it's dystopia. It's not made up planet somewhere with like planet, blah blah blah. It's like, oh, District 12 is clearly West Virginia. I liked that, but I hate. It's another topic. I hate Gale on Team PETA. But like, we don't have to get into that. Maybe later on, if we get real now, we can discuss Hunger Games or make fun of Twilight or whatever, like Confederate vampires. We can go into all this like detail, but for now, we are going to read Sarah's going to reread. I'm going to read the Ilona Andrews Magic Bites story. We're going to discuss it in a similar format to what we've done this go around. We're going to talk about themes, what we liked or disliked, or how I felt reading an actual fantasy sci-fi novel for the first time. We may have future guests like Sarah's sister Kate and our friends that we met at the same time a few years ago, who are either romance readers or fic writers, and they like sci-fi and they like all these things I don't like. So, well, that sounds really negative. That's not true. We all meet somewhere in the middle, but that's our plan. We're going to update again next month, and please comment below if you have any thoughts about like and subscribe. Consensually smash that subscribe button, which I stole from Fundy Fridays. Jen, shout out to you. I watch your videos every Friday. Thank you for discussing the evangelical Christian community. Consensually smashed that subscribe button. And we'll see you guys again next month when I read the Ilona Andrews book. So take care. Bye.